probably remember the moment you looked out the window in late November and the squirrel that had been at your feeder every morning for 2 years was not there, not anywhere. You watched for him for a few days, then a week. Then you stopped watching because it became clear he was gone. You probably told yourself something had happened. A predator, the cold, old age. You marked him down as one of the squirrels who hadn't made it. Then in March, on a morning that felt no different from any other morning, you looked out, and he was on the same branch he had always sat on, eating a nut, looking at your back door, behaving as if no time had passed at all. Here is what nobody tells you. Squirrels disappear and return for reasons that are usually invisible to humans. The squirrel who vanished from your yard for an entire winter was not necessarily dead. He may have been a quarter-mile away, or in your neighbor's backyard, or in deep torpor in a cavity you could not see. And the fact that he came back to the same branch, in the same yard, at the same time of year, that is not coincidence. That is place fidelity, one of the more remarkable cognitive features of tree squirrel life. After today, you will read these absences and returns differently every time they happen. Welcome back. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe, because what you're about to learn will change the way you look at every squirrel that visits your yard. Today, we're going to walk through 7 things that explain how a squirrel can vanish from your yard and come back, what the absences usually mean, why he chose to return to the exact same place, and what the return tells you about your relationship with him. Stay with me until the end, because the final point is the one most viewers never put together. It is the part that gives the return its meaning. Number 1. Most squirrel disappearances are not deaths. The first thing to clear up is the default assumption. When a squirrel disappears from a yard, most homeowners assume he died. In some cases, that is what happened. In many cases, it is not. Researchers tracking marked individuals in suburban environments have found that the most common reasons a squirrel disappears from a specific yard are, in order, temporary range shift, dispersal, illness recovery, deep torpor, and only then, predation or death. In other words, 4 of the 5 most common reasons for a missing squirrel involve the animal still being alive and somewhere nearby. The yard he was in is just no longer his current operating zone. This matters because it changes what the absence likely means. If a squirrel disappears from your yard for a week, 2 weeks, even a month, the odds that he is still alive somewhere are higher than most people assume. Number 2. Juvenile dispersal accounts for many lost squirrels. In the first year of life, juvenile squirrels, particularly males, disperse from their natal territory. They leave the area where they were born and travel sometimes considerable distances to establish new ranges of their own. This is not loss. It is biology. It is how genetic mixing happens in the species. It is how new territories get colonized. It is also how many favorite squirrels in suburban yards mysteriously vanish in their first autumn. They were juveniles, and they were doing what juveniles do. If a squirrel you watched grow up in your yard disappears in the late autumn or early winter of his first full year, the most likely explanation is dispersal. He is not gone. He is somewhere else, and he is doing the same things in his new yard that he did in yours, with a new set of humans observing him. Number 3. Adult range shifts can produce temporary absences. Adult squirrels are more place-faithful than juveniles, but their ranges are not perfectly fixed. A range shift can occur for several reasons. A new dominant squirrel pushing into the territory, a change in food availability, a major disturbance like construction or tree removal, or in some cases, the death of a bonded sibling that triggers a longer distance reorganization. A range shift can put a squirrel several hundred feet to a quarter-mile away from his usual yard for weeks at a time. He has not abandoned the territory. He has temporarily relocated. If conditions change in his favor, he can and often will return. This is one of the more common explanations for medium-length absences, 3 weeks to 2 months, that end with the squirrel reappearing in his usual spot as if nothing had happened. Number 4. In severe winters, deep torpor can last days at a time. Grey squirrels do not hibernate, but in extreme cold they can enter extended torpor states lasting several days, in which they remain in a tree cavity, barely moving, with vital signs reduced. To a homeowner watching the yard from a window, a squirrel in extended torpor looks identical to a squirrel that is gone. He is not visible, he is not at the feeder, he is not on the branches. He is, in fact, in a hole in a tree, 30 feet up, breathing slowly, conserving every calorie his body can spare against the temperature outside. If your most reliable squirrel disappears during a deep cold snap and reappears days or even a week later when the temperatures rise, you may have been watching this. The yard did not lose him. He paused. Number 5. Place fidelity in adult squirrels is remarkably specific. This is the part that explains the return. When a squirrel chooses a territory, the choice is not casual. It involves the recognition of dozens of specific landmarks, dozens of cache locations, the knowledge of every escape route and every threat angle, the social relationships with neighboring squirrels, and a long-term cost-benefit calculation about food availability, predator pressure, and shelter access. Once he has invested in that calculation, and the investment is enormous, he is not eager to abandon it. Adult squirrels show some of the strongest place fidelity in the rodent world. They will tolerate considerable hardship to remain in a familiar territory rather than disperse to an unfamiliar one. This is why a squirrel who disappears for weeks and then returns is, in some sense, doing what evolution shaped him to do. The return is the path of least cognitive resistance. He has the map. The map has not been updated to a new location. The map says, home is here. Number 6. The return is always to specific individual landmarks. If you watch carefully, the returning squirrel does not just come back to the general area, he comes back to specific spots. The same branch, the same fence rail, the same approach path to the feeder, the same sleeping cavity in many cases. This is because the spatial map he is using has not been replaced. He is operating off the same internal model he had before the absence. The branches he chose, the routes he ran, the perches he watched from, all of those are still tagged in his memory as the right answers. So those are where he goes. If you have ever noticed that a returning squirrel seems to slot back into your yard with eerie precision, sitting where he used to sit, taking the same route to the feeder, oriented the same direction, that is not coincidence. That is the visible surface of an unchanged spatial map. Number 7. The return means something specific about your yard. This is the part I want you to sit with, because it changes the meaning of everything we just walked through. When a squirrel returns to your yard after a long absence, when he picks the same branch, the same approach, the same feeder, he is choosing your yard again. Not generically. Not because he had no other options. He has had other options. He has been somewhere else. He could have stayed there. Place fidelity in tree squirrels is, in a real sense, an investment decision. He has weighed the cost of returning against the cost of staying away, and he has decided that returning is worth the energy. That decision is based on a long history of observations he has made about your yard, the food, the safety, the predator load, the cover, and yes, you. Your patterns, your reliability, the fact that you fill the feeder, the fact that you have not chased him, the fact that you have not changed in ways that would make the return riskier. He has made a decision about your yard that includes you in the math. You have been the one constant element in his calculation that you can do anything about. The trees do not change, the fence does not change, but you do. Your habits, your absences, your moods, your reliability, and he has been factoring all of it into whether to come back. And he came back. I am not going to tell you that he loves your yard, because that is not the right word. I am also not going to tell you that he merely tolerates it. The decision he made to return is something more rigorous than affection and more meaningful than habit. It is a multi-month, multi-variable judgment that came back in your favor. The Cherokee, the Norse, and the Celts all noticed something about squirrels, that they cross between worlds, that they return, that they choose. None of that folklore was invented out of nothing. It was generations of patient human observation, seeing what cognitive science has only confirmed in the last 30 years. The animal who came back to your yard after a long absence chose to come back. The choice included you. The yard you look at out your window is not a passive scene. It is a place that has been chosen, and chosen again, by an animal who has been weighing his options and weighing your reliability against everything else he could be doing. You have been part of that choice without ever knowing it. You have been living next to that kind of judgment for years without knowing the full shape of it. Now you know. Tell me in the comments, has a squirrel ever disappeared from your yard for weeks or months and then come back? Did he come back to the same branch? I read every one. Some of the stories this community has shared have stayed with me long after I read them. I'll see you in the next one.